questions. Inference questions have little to do with the conclusion of the passage. Instead, they might ask you to make inferences about one or more premises. How to recognize an inference question. Which of the following can be inferred from the information above? Which of the following must be true on the basis of the statements above? Which of the following conclusions is best supported by the passage? Which of the following conclusions could most probably be drawn from the information above? For example, fewer elected officials are supporting environmental legislations this year than at any time in the last decade. In a study of 30 elected officials, only 5 were actively campaigning for new environmental legislation. This comes at a time when the public's concern for the environment is growing by leaps and bounds. Which of the following conclusions is best supported by the passage above? More elected officials are needed to support environmental legislation. B. Elected officials have lost touch with the concerns of the public. C. The 5 elected officials who actively campaigned for new environmental legislation should be congratulated. D. If the environment is to be saved, elected officials must support environmental legislation. E. If elected officials are truly to represent their constituents, many of them must increase their support of environmental legislation. Resolve explain questions. In these questions, the passage will present you with 2 seemingly contradictory facts. Your job is to find the answer choice that allows both of the facts from the passage to be true. How to recognize or resolve explain questions. Which of the following, if true, resolves the apparent contradiction presented in the passage above? Which of the following, if true, best explains the discrepancy described above? Which of the following, if true, forms a partial explanation for the paradox described above? For example, in 1994, Tip-Top Airlines reported an increase in the total number of passengers it carried from the year before, but a decrease in the total revenues, even though prices for its tickets on all routes remained unchanged during the 2-year period. Which of the following, if true, best reconciles the apparent paradox? A. Tip-Top Airlines was a victim of a mild recession in 1994. B. Total passenger miles were up in 1994. C. Fuel's costs remained constant during the 2-year period. D. Passengers traveled shorter and thus less expensive distances in 1994. E. Tip-Top did not buy any new airplanes or equipment in 1994. Evaluate the argument questions. How to recognize and evaluate the argument question. Pick an answer choice that would help to assess or evaluate part of an argument. 2. The answer to which of the following questions would be most useful in evaluating the significance of the author's claims? 3. Which of the following pieces of information would be most useful in assessing the logic of the argument presented above? For example, following a period of lingering malaise after a recent remarkable economic upturn in the solar-powered energy sector, Company X, a major maker of solar-powered generators, claimed that its rapid upturn resulted from the inventory still on hand in its warehouse. Which of the following, if it could be carried out, would most useful in evaluating the company's hypothesis as to the causes of its rapid economic upturn? A. Comparing the length of the economic downturn experienced by X to the length of the upturn later experienced by X. B. Comparing the rapidity of the economic upturn for X to that of the other major makers of solar-powered generators, which did not have inventory on hand. C. Calculating the average sales increases within the individual business units of X. D. Comparing the total number of solar-powered generator sales by X just before the economic upturn to the total sales just after the economic upturn. E. Using the economic theory to predict the most likely date of the next economic upturn for X. Identify the reasoning questions. How to recognize and identify the reasoning questions. Identify a method, technique, or strategy used in the passage, or to identify the role of a bolded phrase in the passage. The bolded phrase plays which of the following roles in the argument above? The argument uses which of the following methods of reasoning? For example, although measuring the productivity of outside consultants is a complex endeavor, Company K, which relies heavily on consultants for long-term projects, must find ways to assess the performance of these workers. The risks to a company that does not review the productivity of its human resources are simply too great. Last year, Company L was forced into receivership after its productivity declined for the third straight quarter. The bolded phrases play which of the following roles in the argument above? A. The first phrase states the author's conclusion, and the second phrase refutes that conclusion. B. The first phrase states an assumption of the argument, and the second phrase provided evidence to undermine that position. C. The first phrase states one of the author's premises and the second phrase provides the argument's conclusion. D. The first phrase states a position, and the second phrase refutes that position. E. The first phrase states the conclusion, and the second phrase supports the conclusion with an analogy. Parallel the reasoning questions. How to recognize a parallel the reasoning question. Recognize the reasoning in the passage, and follow the same line of reasoning in one of the answer choices. Which of the following most closely parallels the reasoning used in the argument above? Which of the following supports its conclusion in the same manner as the passage? Which of the following is most like the argument above in its logical structure? For example, world-class marathon runners do not run more than 6 miles per day when they are training. Therefore, if you run more than 6 miles per day, you are not world-class. Which of the following statements supports its conclusion in the same manner as the argument above? 1. Sprinters always run in the morning. If it's morning, and you see someone running, it will not be a sprinter. 2. Paint never dries in less than 3 hours. If it dries in less than 3 hours, it is not paint. 3. Little league games are more fun for the parents than for the children who actually play. Therefore, parents should be made to play. 4. If a car starts in the morning, chances are it will start again that evening. Our car always starts in the morning, and it always starts in the evening as well. 5. If you sleep less than 4 hours per night, you may be doing yourself a disservice. Studies have shown that the most valuable sleep occurs in the 5th hour. For more information, visit www.gmatcoaching.com.